Good day to all of you. Welcome to this Talking Safety podcast, where we discuss all issues pertaining safety and QHSE. And today we'll be looking at ISO management systems. Is it all about certification, compliance, or real change? Many organizations go into ISO certification without thinking about the obligations that will be required of them, without thinking about the resources that will be required to maintain this management system, and they end up abusing the whole process. So today we'll be discussing what it means to be ISO certified and wondering together with you whether it's necessary for all companies to become ISO certified. So with me tonight, I have two panelists. I have with me Frank. Frank, could you introduce yourself to the viewers?
All right. Thank you so much, Ronald. I am so glad to be on the Talking Safety podcast today. This evening, as we discuss ISO management systems. My name is Frank Munguleni. I am a QHSSE professional with over 10 years experience in that field. I have worked in different industries. I've worked in the tobacco industry. I have also worked in the water and beverages industry. I've worked in the plastics industry. I have worked in the batteries industry, and currently I am working in the steel industry. So currently I work with Roofings Limited as the QHSSE engineer at Roofings Limited. But a little bit outside of my 9 to 5 job, I run a consultancy firm, operational excellence consultants. We basically deal in supporting different organizations with ISO management systems. So I am happy to interact with you and share a little bit of insights into this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank, and welcome. The other discussant we have in this show today is Norman. Norman, please say hello to the viewers and listeners.
Thanks, Ronald. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast. Being selected among the teams to speak a certain topic means a lot. My name's Norman Ainomjia. My background rallies from oil and gas, where basically I say that's where my journey properly started. That's where I realized management systems that work. Maybe that's an insight we'll pick in later on in the conversation. I've worked in transport and logistics. I've worked in humanitarian. That's in Mogadishu, is something a bit different from what most of us do. I'm a seasoned consultant as well, leveraged into management systems consultancy. I've struggled with my approach, but I'm happy that I'll first understand your needs as a customer, and then I'll also guide you in the right path. Not when you go in as a consultant and you end up being the one consulting a lot. So with over now, I'll say 14 years into health and safety, practicing and then management level. Currently, I'm working with American Tower as a senior health and safety manager, and it means a lot. It's a change of direction, considering I've from the other logistics to oil and gas and now to telecom. I believe in challenges. So being on this call, being on this podcast, I believe to learn, share, and insight more into the discussion. Thanks,
you.
Ronald.
Thank you so much, Norman. And myself, I'm Ronald Bete. I'm a QHSC professional, a passionate one at that, and I will be handling this discussion and managing the discussion. All right, I think we'll go straight to our first issue, our first question. To be brutally honest, why do most organizations pursue ISO certification? At what point does it move from being compliance and continuous improvement to being a marketing tool? So I think I'll go first with Frank. Frank, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Ronald, once again. Now, management systems, like I mentioned, I support different organizations into these aspects of getting certified with management systems.
Yes.
And I think in that, one of the honest questions we have at the beginning is the question of why. Why do you want to go into this? Because it's at that point where you get to realize why the client wants to be certified. What is driving them What is their purpose? Why do they want to go into this? Now, with the different clients that I have interacted with, to be honest, it is most of the times an external factor that drives them into going into such
An external
whether
factor.
it's a market opportunity. Yes. Whether it's a certain kind of market that they want to unlock because the customer requires them to be ISO certified, or there's a tender that they're trying to push for, and one of the requirements is an ISO certification, or it's just part of showing to the external market that it's building reputation that we are actually ISO certified company. So most of the times, the drive from these clients is a bit external. So it doesn't necessarily come from the internal perspective of the business. We really want to go into this to improve our processes. So it starts with the external aspects that there's a certain market or something they are looking up to at the end of the day. So now that's where the discussion point starts from. Because to now go into the details of these, because now it's driven by an external party. It's not now necessarily something for the organization itself. It becomes more of something the external person out there. So now, if I can say a little bit of an experience with one of the clients I work with, I may not necessarily disclose their name, but this is the fine most of the times. So I walked into this client approach and wanted the ISO 9001. And of course, they found out that I support organizations in this. And when we had this discussion, just to understand what's the purpose or what is driving them into this, I realized that they were more driven by the desire to be able to supply to a certain sector or a certain segment of the market, which made ISO 9001 required. Without it, you can't be able to supply to that market. Now, their only interest was to have this certificate as part of a requirement for them to supply to that market. So, therefore, they are mainly driven by the purpose that we need to get this certificate. Without understanding what ISO is, without getting to the details of what it may without even understanding what might the resources and everything we are supposed to have to achieve this or to maintain this certificate, for them, all they wanted was get that certificate over the line, and we can be able to supply to that market. I think that's an experience that I'm there to start with. I think I'll delve.
Thank you, Frank, for sharing those insights. Norman, please take it on.
Yeah, thanks. This is a hard nut because, as you've mentioned, I would agree with. There's more of external triggers for most of the organizations in certification, and I think also that puts a certain question: is how do we organize? Sorry, how does ISO certification in the country mean? Is it something that has been popularized through either sessions, or it is a market need, like it comes in as a trigger of certain markets wanting it? So I think we still have a journey where, for instance, the worries we are speaking about, where a person wants a certificate to supply, we need to think as a question: why is the trigger more externally coming? Why is it coming outside? And if you could understand management systems, if you're defining them, it doesn't mean that organizations which are not ISO certified do not have management systems in the first place. But the question is that in the definition of a management system, any setup of your systems, either documentation or how you operate, forms a basic management system. So I think when the external drive can be even associated to that. For instance, oil and gas. When you go in oil and gas, some of those requirements are preset. So I don't think it should be a bad thing in the first place. The question, or the next question would be, as consultants, for instance, how do we make the customers understand, or the clients who want to get certification understand? Because At one point, this is where you come to me and say, I have a headache, right? And I even define that I want a painkiller. And there is no room for discussion for me to tell you that, okay, you have a headache. What could be the root cause of that headache? Is I think it's something we may need to think about, where ISO certification has become a business on two ends. For instance, I give you a certificate, you pay me money.
Yes.
Still, as practitioners, as consultants, we still have that question to answer. The ethics of certification. Do we actually fulfill those questions? If I work to a company and they told me they only want a certificate and then we can do the rest later,
Yes.
would I go that route and give them a certificate? That would be my biggest question. And in this discussion, maybe through the other people who may engage with this session, those are the questions. As a company, as a person working in an organization, going to undertake ISO certification, was there a table discussion between managers, between the top management, to know the direction you are taking? What are the benefits? Who is involved? What it requires? So sometimes, even if it comes externally, there is still room to have a discussion, an honest discussion. And maybe among the people in the organization, there is someone who understands what ISO can deliver. So I think we need to trigger that part. You know, you'll be invited, you have a conversation. You can even ask for what audience should come in. You can ask that as a consultant and say, okay, I would be happy to see you line managers, get some people. And I think that's where the approach may define how best include with even all these challenges, we can move forward beyond just the worry of it coming externally.
Well, Norman, I hear what you're saying, but I want to share with you a real experience and I want to get your feedback on it. So a couple of years ago, we visited this logistics company and they really wanted to be ISO certified like within 3 weeks. And they didn't have any management system involved. They were not implementing anything. And you know the process can be long, okay? And in short, we told them, guys, it's not possible for us to deliver this ISO certificate to you in 2 weeks. And they were asking us, can't you first give us the certificate? Then we will build the system thereafter. We told them no, but the long story short, we lost that business. So I want to, and those days I was in the market as a consultant. So that day as a consultant, I lost business. I don't know, where do you draw the line now? I just want to get your experiences. Yeah, maybe Frank, you can go in, and then Nomad, you can come in.
It's a tough space for consultants, where you're put in between the rock and the hard place. You definitely know that within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you can't deliver somebody a certificate. Even if you did, the certificate will remain there, but the system will walk away with you immediately you leave that place.
Correct.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I think the bottom line is that many people going in for ISO certifications do not understand it. In particular, as our space as consultants or professionals in this line, I believe is and then to educate them, give them the guidance of what this is all about.
Yeah.
Them seeing it from the external point of view of unlocking a certain market, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. That is one purpose. However, now as a professional in this line, it's about making them understand that actually this certificate can do more than unlocking that bit of market for you. This certificate could become a bigger tool than just necessarily unlocking that segment of market that you would want to supply or you would want to go into. This could help more into even improving your customer satisfaction. It could be a trigger. It could even be one of these days I like having this discussion a lot. I tell people about how to link these ISO systems to the bottom line, because this is what the top management is always discussing about, bottom line. How does ISO contribute to the bottom line of the organization? It doesn't matter whether it is ISO 9000, whether it is ISO 14001, whether it's ISO 45001.
Yeah.
We need to change that narrative from moving from just the compliance aspects to how does it then help the organization contribute to the bottom line. Because once you start having conversations of bottom line, this is where you get the top people interested to sit and have a conversation with you. because initially their understanding of it may have just been to help them unlock a certain market where that brings revenue to them. But when you sit down with them and you're guiding and driving them on the conversations of how this even impacts on your bottom line, how this improves your processes, how this your costs, and how that better every day. That is a space I think we need to go into more as professionals or consultants that guide these businesses or these organizations to understand that these systems are more than just tools for compliance. No, they are actually much bigger than compliance tools. Thank you.
Thank you. Norman, over to you.
Yeah, the first challenge you gave me is the first question is, okay, you come in, I want a certificate, I have 2 weeks, and now it's your decision. The line, of course, was you lost the business, which I'd say, well, I don't know what you left them, because I know we have what we may call exit note to a person who have not given you business, and those will happen. You have to draw the line. That's a fact, because if a person wants a certificate before the actual process or before the having set up a management system, then yes, that's a patient, because in the real world he might get that certificate. Nowadays, I'll say nowadays, it's possible that person may have either by then I may have got a certificate. But he needs to have something on the mind, as Frank has said. One, you are going to do a business to that supplier who wants a certificate. The question is, do you think that supplier only needs a certificate? Because if you're assuming you got the job, why do you think they think like you, that all you need is to present a paper? Or you think it's one of, let's say, an indicator that you're well organized to deliver the business. They expect you to deliver the service fully. So I may not dwell much on. Yes, I've already told you that yes, you lost the business. That's true.
Yeah.
I've mentioned that I'd give you a living note to remind you. I even can ask for either 30 minutes or 1 hour to give you a brief of what does a management system, what can it add to you as a company. I can even cite, because some may declare what organizations they wanted. Some may not, because they know maybe you may go and declare it. But I'll assume, I'm like, okay, that must be a good supplier who wants you to have ISO certification. These are things you should note. One, what is in a management system? You clearly have a well-structured way of doing things. You have clearly defined procedures, meaning you have that consistency. If you said, for us to do your lifting activities, we should have a certified lifting operators, we should have lifting plans that define how we do the activity, we should ensure we manage our risks by doing job safety analysis, risk assessments.
Yeah.
And these are things you live with every day as you do their job. And they don't expect you to walk in, present people, and walk away, and then all of a sudden you are here and there. Today you say, I work like this. Tomorrow you say, I work like this. When something goes wrong, you either blame it to a new person you've brought on board. So this will continue to happen. But I think the most important thing for us to do is that don't just walk the door of the customer without telling them the benefits of an ISO certification. They may go try get a certificate, but to tell you, they may come back to you again, at least now to know that they need to implement that system. Already you'd have given them some of the benefits they are going to get from implementing that system, not just the equivalent of a certificate only as the end product.
I get you. All right. I think that it would be good to always remind companies of how these ISO certificates, how these ISO standards came about and why they exist. Because I suspect there are the organizations that fail to understand the purpose of an ISO standard. It's not that every company has to certify. No. In my view, I think it presents good case practice or things that you need to adopt if you are going to manage whatever the standard is about correctly. But it seems to me that I think organizations tend to think that if they are not certified, then they are not doing the right thing. Yet it's not always the case. So now, with that in mind, when companies pursue ISO certification without the right intent, at what point does it become counterproductive? And by counterproductive, I mean creating unnecessary bureaucracy, employee cynicism, false sense of control. Remember that everything that you do when you're trying to become ISO certified comes from management. But if in practice it's not being done, then there's a lot of confusion, cynicism, and disengagement. So at what point does this end up being just creating a false sense of security, thinking that risks are managed yet are actually not managed?
If I can start on that.
Yes, please.
It's a good question. You've got a certificate. Let's assume it's on the wall, and even it's on the signatures. You'll adopt it on the signatures. We are ISO either triple certified. You're going to put all those signatures, meaning you're speaking that we are ISO certified. And the roadmap towards certification plays a big part, and how involved are the people is also another part. I'll give an example. How were the standard of procedures developed? Was it the process owners getting involved, basically eliminating all those loops? Like you're giving an example of bureaucracy. You find a document is just basically making it so difficult to do the work. The moment you put a signature on and you say this is an approved way of doing work, the next problem you're going to get is that you're either going to comply, or maybe the records, everything may tend to be a different story from the actual works. And what usually happens is if you got someone, for instance, to audit you, you either have to cook data, and what usually happens is that you find that the ISO audits become another activity. Yet in reality, when you're being audited, you should present how you work, basically listening to see why you've not done it right, where can you improve. But you're going to spend weeks or even months before the audit cooking data, asking people, do you have this record, do you have this? So yet it's a management system. You're supposed to be working the way you're supposed to be working. Why you see even people, they may even spend more money to get another consultant to first align them.
That is it.
It's your management system, and people should own it. He gave an example of the shop floor. The shop floor, and these are things I've audited. And the first conversation is a random employee. You meet in a corridor, and you ask him. You can ask him how many. You can even be very straight. How many standards are you? This, as in, you pick a few things, and the moment they are not landing from the shop floor employee or from the entrance of the gate, it tells a story that it's like something from management. We wanted to get a contract, we got it, but now we were carrying it as a burden. Remember, you have your 3 years to maintain it. So it becomes a headache, and when it becomes a headache, people tend to distance themselves from it. You find people stressed. Remember, we're talking about health and well-being, which is part of the 45001, but during the audit, people sleep less. People have to think of how to talk to the auditor. People are coached. So to me, I believe the moment you exit the audit and get a certificate, but you've not bought into to make it work, it's going to cause confusion. It's going to become a cost line. It's going to become a problem for people, and it will be very difficult to continue to maintain it. It's going to be costly to maintain it, and to some extent, it may frustrate your operations and your operational excellency.
Thank you, Frank. Over to you.
Let me pick up from where Norman has stopped, and I want to clearly agree with whatever he has said in. It starts back from where we started, the first question, which was reflecting on purpose, why you're going into this. Now, many organizations feel management systems stop at the point of getting the certificates. Actually, when that is where the actual work is basically starting from, because these management systems come with maintenance every year and after every 3 years cycle, and there's that recertification and all that. So when you start from the purpose, from the wrong note where you're doing it to unlock a certain segment of market, once you have the certificate, you feel you've achieved your goal. The rest of it now becomes a burden. What that means is you literally integrate the management systems into your day-to-day operations. Now, these are part of the symptoms. How easily you will know that your management system is counterproductive is if we are having audits and you start preparing ISO files different from the day-to-day operations, your management system is counterproductive, because ISO these management systems are basically what you're doing every day. So you
Correct.
can't say you're having separate files and then you're starting to cook data, like Norman said, you start to fabricate data. And additionally, even when you go in for the audits, they ask a question and everybody is looking at one person. Therefore,
Yeah.
maybe that
Yes.
is the management
The
or the
management system is that one
data,
person.
whatever that person. Yes, the
Yeah.
system is basically one person. So it's not integrated into the whole operation of an organization, which is very, very wrong. Therefore, this whole system becomes counterproductive. You waste a lot of people's time, you waste a lot of resources because every year you have to pay for these things. There's surveillance audits, there's recertification. You're putting a lot of resources into this. You're even employing somebody probably as a management representative or an ISO coordinator.
Yes.
These are all resources that you in, but literally it's counterproductive. It's not giving in any results because the management system itself has not been integrated into the operation. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things you will see in documents, you see well-written procedures, very good procedures. But when you go on ground, ideally, that is not how they do work. Now, one of the things you will notice, especially during audits, a
Yeah.
shop floor, and you find the very organized. In fact, for other organizations, they will stop operations. They are not working. You'll find the place is very organized. They'll tell you they don't have orders to run. Not
On
because
that
they don't
day.
have orders to run. The procedures they use to run these orders is different from the procedures they've documented. You'll catch them live if you support in these operations. So they will tell you, we have a breakdown, or we have this, we have that. We are not having operations. So if the audit is for 2 days, for the entirety of the 2 days, you won't see any activity happen. So you'll basically be on documents, boardrooms, you sit in fancy offices and all that, and that's it. And I think that is a very negative indicator that the management system is counterproductive. We begin to hide what we do from what we document, and that necessarily now becomes time, effort, and resources. I think I'll lament
Frank,
on that.
let me ask you this, and I think Nomad will come in as well. You have mentioned that organizations will often have very nice procedures, but it's not those procedures. The procedures they follow on the ground are different from the procedures they have written. So, Frank, why is that the case? Why aren't companies writing down what they do on a day-to-day in the management system procedures as opposed to having two different ones? Can you speak to that? And then Norman can come in as well.
Okay, thank you. There could be quite a bit of reasons as to why that is happening, but I'll pick out a few that I believe contributes a lot to that. One is the fact that I will use the example that you mentioned. So an organization will want a management system in 3 weeks or in 4 weeks. So what is going to happen is they are going to just basically do a lot of copy and paste, bring SOPs, procedures from somewhere, copy them, replace names, and do the documentation necessarily is not their own. They don't own it, but they are doing a lot of copy paste or basically just because documentation. This is one of the audits, which is documentation. So they want to showcase that we are very prepared in terms of documentation. So they will pick out all nice documentation from online or copy and paste from other organizations that have been in this certification. But for that, you're picking a procedure that is working in another organization, which may not necessarily be doing the same thing as you, but because you just feel that procedure has worked there, you're going to make it part of your SOP. So there's less involvement of the people in this organization. So what is the people documenting procedure are not even the process owners. They are not the actual process owners because the actual process clearly tell you this is how we do it, and then we would definitely document it that way. But because these are not the actual process owners involved in this, so you find that they will bring a very beautiful SOP, some from another organization, copy paste it, replace names of the organization, and then we adopt and sign it as approved documents for this organization. Now, once this has been signed and approved, it does not necessarily reflect what is happening here. Remember, the process owner here was not even involved in that process. So it becomes, they'll tell you, these are your documents. You have to own them. Now, the point comes into the audits. As the process owner, you know, this is not what you do. So if it's time for the audit and the auditor has to go see on ground what I do, yet I put a rope on my neck that these are my SOPs, this is how I do it, yet actually on ground, it's not how I do it.
Yeah.
I must be able to fake a breakdown so that I survive that scare. So I think for me, that is basically one of the reasons as to why we have a lot of procedures that are not working in many of these organizations, basically because of just copy and paste.
Thank you. Norman, over to you.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Ronald. I don't know what to add, but yeah, like, why would the procedure be well done, signed by management, and actually there's no work happening, or maybe a plant has shut down during an audit so that people do not do. And there are many dependabilities as well. And I think one part is played by the consultants.
Yeah.
I gave one example of an organization comes in. Yes, it may not necessarily by the way be like they want it in 2 weeks. Some even in the normal process where you can map it and say we are doing it for in 6 months or 1 year, is the question is how much involved are the process owners? Because for a process to be, for a procedure, for instance, to be there, it's beautiful, but it's not being followed. The question is that who developed that? Who developed that procedure? Was it a consultant? Was it exactly how we do things? Because one thing I understand is a procedure is how you do things, not necessarily, there's no other format that is stipulated that this is how you do your maintenance. Let's say you have your fleet, this is how you maintain it. There's no standard, unless now basically it would even question your team, the people's competence you have. Are they actually doing things? So yes, people may have the good procedures, but if they are not developed by the process owners or people going to do the work, maybe why they are not following them, they are not exactly how things are done. Or I went and copied, let's say I do power generation or equipment maintenance or supply. Let me give an example of Mantrack, a known cut supplier. Here I'm starting to come up to supply gear. Then I go to cut and I copy their processes, but I even don't have people to implement those processes. I do not have systems. I do not have parts.
Yes.
So I think maybe, as you've mentioned, you need to explain to people that a management system is how you do things, not how another company does things. Even if they told you are going to be a client to Total, let's say Total Energies, which is a bigger company, when they bring you on as a civil contractor, you are doing civil works, and how you'll do them on the ground is how your procedures should read, right? Not. So I think the big part should also be us as consultants. As you've mentioned, you may go in and say, I may charge you extra cost to develop you SOPs, and meaning you've skipped a part of consulting the process owners. So we may end up having this cancer, not because companies want to have beautiful SOPs, but because you did not guide. And I'm not saying there are good companies doing ISO certification clearly, where you'll be straight and you don't need to be like hard or very solid. I mean, like saying this is how things are done. You need to listen in and understand why they are telling you this. You can correct them by saying, okay, this one, as you do things, also refer to other standards, other requirements, because at the end of it, you may find that a person telling you to do this way is because he does not understand the standard way of doing things. So ISO management systems should reflect the people that do the work, should reflect how you do the works and how the capability of your resources. Because I think sometimes we put a high level of expectation in a procedure, and in a long run, the resources you have are not capable of doing it that way. And now a procedure which was well written becomes a piece of paper. So that's how I believe the beautiful SOPs may have come because someone afforded to write them for the people, and then actually that's how you're not doing the work, and then you end up closing shop or else trying to cook data because you did not follow the SOP that you registered as a standard practice.
Okay. Thank you. There is something I've noticed from my experience that leave alone the other processes and procedures, but I found that on their own, without the support of a QHSC ISO management systems consultant, many organizations are not able to perform an internal audit and a management review on their own. I don't know if you guys have experienced something similar, but they are certified all the same. I'm wondering, what do you think causes this kind of a reality? I've found many companies that are ISO certified, but you find that their own staff, without the support of an ISO consultant, are not able to perform management review meetings and internal audits. And I'm wondering why this is the case. I don't know if you have faced something, if you have found this as common as well on your side.
Yes, thank you, Ronald. This is something that I have seen common, especially in the consultancy aspects. Many of the organizations that you try to enroll in or you support in certification still run back to you a year or 2 years later to help them conduct internal audits. And I think this is true. I think for me, one of the biggest elements that contribute to this is the fact of, I would call it basically competence. Many organizations, others are willing to invest in competence of their own people, but also on the other side, others feel it's more of a trust issue that they do not trust their own, that they would even want to invest in to do these internal audits. They feel an expertise or somebody from the out, that's like the consultant, would be the best case scenario. However, just one thing that is important in this kind of discussion is the fact that even when you start your own management system, when you enroll into this, you're not going to just become experts from the start. That's the reality. I remember my journey into ISO audits when I was just pressed into ISO stuff. We were trained as internal auditors within the team. I was in the QA team.
Yes.
And I remember one of the first audits that I did was basically scripted. I had to download the checklist and you would go question by question, looking at that, you're ticking boxes, whether whatever the auditee gave you was the right thing or not, you had something to tick off because they said something. And it definitely was a journey. Now I can walk into an audit without even a checklist because at least I understand, I've mastered the clauses. I know what is required of each of those clauses. Now, many of the organizations are not willing to go that process or that journey. They want to skip that journey and growing the team to go through because it's going to be a process. They are not going to become experts immediately, but you have to be able to give them the opportunity to do. As they continue doing these audits, they become experts into it. Even the quality of the outcomes that come from these audits. So many the other organizations try to skip that process and outsource it to an expert already. But I feel, to me, it is not a good way to do because my expertise lives and I leave that place. But when you invest or build somebody internally, internal audits are not something that you schedule to do once in a year. They can even be a day to day because it doesn't have to be documented, scripted, and all that. An auditor who walks through your process sees something and is able to correct it immediately, not waiting for the scheduled internal audit. But when you bring in an external person, a consultant, that expertise walks away the moment I conclude the audit and share with you the report. And I think that is something organizations need to understand so that they continue to invest more into their own people, build competence, and then they can also build a competent team over the years to conduct internal audits within the organization.
Thank you, Norman.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Ronald. So now that the question of internal auditors being outsourced, I look at it in one way in and one way out. One, as you've mentioned, the question would still be, why do people want to outsource it? As a process, internal audits are part of the process. You're checking yourself, you're checking your health. So still it goes back to how the perception of why should you have an internal audit. And from experience, I've in a few laws, I'll say I've been lucky or unlucky that in most organizations you find work in a growing company. I think I've initiated 2-3 audits where I've done the first audit of the company to be ISO certified. And it starts first of all from the setup. If you said we want to have a training for our internal auditors, what training did they have? Maybe someone came and told you the training should be 5 days, and the person was squeezed to say, let's have it for 1 day. So the result of your internal auditors will be coming from basically that 1 day training, which was meant to be 5 days. So how do you expect those people to conduct a proper internal audit is another question. The other two part is one, your internal audit function, if you're going to call it your internal audit team. How is it set up? One thing I've learned over the years, over the job is, do you have, I'm sorry to say this may be also be part of the company setup, do you have certain goals added, personal goals, so that if a person knows it's even part of his goals, he's going to execute it and it's measurable? As part of the goals of the internal audit team, they have a certain percentage coming from a proper audit, even the final audit result. And I recall that accountability, it may not necessarily account to a culture, but at one point when we are developing a culture, we have that part of where people can be accountable, where people may learn by being responsible. So I think that's a crucial part also. If a person knows that he has other goals to deliver, so internal audit accounts nothing, it means they'll accord it little time or even focus. So I think still from the training of your internal audit, how you set them to basically be measured during in their performance can give you the first culture just through how you set them up. Then two is who is involved. For instance, we've talked about management review. A team sweats through, audits the other people, but one thing I've learned personally as well is you go into a department, you find non-conformities. The moment you get them and they are put on the management review or on the report or the audit report, it's as if it is a crime. It looks as if that department is not performing.
It shouldn't be like that.
How do you do that roadmap? I think even prior to internal audits, you need to have that 1 hour discussion with top management and say, okay, we have our audit, either we are going to audit each section, whichever way you set it up, so that people knows the inputs and the outputs, how do they benefit the organization. So I think even internally, there needs to be politics. I sorry to use the word politics of managing the audit so that people keep on board. People know that there's accountability, not to say for performing. Basically, if you've had your certification for 2-3 years, you can even trace what improvements have we made since ever we did this, so that you give them infographically that we've moved from this, and this will not be coming from the auditors. When people audit, they only display the non-conformities. You need to pick the good practices, the wins from what you picked. So I think the moment we start making audits as healthy checks, as areas to show which good practices can we learn from department to department, we are going to struggle to even pick the interest of an auditor. Because if I know when I do an audit, I have to sit with the head of department to discuss what to show and what to show, that health is gone. So I've spoke this through my experience. It may be different from other people, but from my understanding, we need to normalize it. As you've said, Frank, it has to be a day-to-day. People need to know. They don't need to remember that it is soon an audit and they now start preparing. It should be a day-to-day. And how you can do that? It can be through weekly reporting. Some of the same dynamics, like I'll give an example where I work from. We always put our challenges and our collective actions. They are clearly tracked in an internal operations review. So, and which support do you need? So already you're doing your internal audit through an ops review, which makes it much easier to live. Basically, you are living audit as a life, and continual improvement is natural in this press. So when I go on the side of why would I opt for an external auditor or consultant to do internal audit, I may have a mix. I may love also to have a mix unless I'm struggling. It's also good to get another person who's not part of your operations and maybe set up a 1-week audit through your department. Doesn't mean it may be the final report to be shared by auditors, but you want to see another way of how audit is done, but we should not put it as our lifeline. We can put it to see how it looks like if another person checks all of us. How I've seen it being done, the other mistakes may be done in internal audits is almost a department auditing itself, only like where you have a little conflict of interest. What if we said we have our internal auditors? You come from finance, audit safety, or you come from operations, audit technical, you come from HR, audit ABC, so that we even start understanding our processes from a different angles, and which creates another little cohesion. Once the HR team goes and sees what, basically there are many learning points. You may see how things are done in technical and picks takeaways he takes to another department. So to me, until we take internal audits as real life checks, even if we train or look at capacity will grow over time, as you've mentioned, Frank. It can't grow in 1, 2, 3 years. It will grow on, but that's when you consistently, and top management is part of this. You hold a management review, and there is no exco member, there is no top management. You find that you are with the managers whom you are organizing with the internal audits, so asking for the auditees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very, very deep insights there. Thank you to both of you. Now, there's one challenge that I have personally witnessed. So I think for my last 3 or 4 employers, I was able to help them get ISO certified. But the challenge that I have experienced is that oftentimes it's very, very hard for me to move the standard from myself or my department to the organization. So the organization will see ISO as the QHSSE thing. So how can we as consultants make ISO the organization's thing, not the QHSSE department's thing? Frank, you're there?
Thanks, Ronald. That's a very natural question. I'll use the word natural because the way you've talked about it is exactly what has basically happened for me also, basically in my last 3 organizations where I've been involved. One, even in the goals, sorry to say, the goals for maintaining certification only fall to me. I've just changed it. I'll maybe speak to that later. And first of all, it first starts from the interest from top management. Are they actually understanding what ISO certification means? Like we've defined, you're certifying a management system, and management system is not HSE or QHSE. It's exactly the whole system working. And some are willing. The budget is not an issue. As you've mentioned, I don't think you've worked in organizations which are not capable of paying for, or where they have to scramble for funds. They do. But it's at the moment they hand you the budget, it's like they've handed health and safety department to maintain the certification. And I think still that setup of the management system committee, I think we may need to transit from calling it an internal audit committee. We have the committees. I think it's high time we have a management system committee, and its clear responsibilities are not necessarily, it's a day-to-day activity, but you understand that each has a weight to carry, and each is answerable to that system, including the setup of the roadmap for the audits, the setup of your review sessions, not necessarily audit. You can decide. I've given you an example that I had to slow certain responsibilities to all managers. For instance, each year we pick lessons from the projects we've done, and those are discussed independently in each department. They look at the projects they've done, what lessons in regard to process, how we approach things, what lessons have we looked on, how can we optimize? When you use optimize, many people may think of cash and what. No, how can we engage people? How can we make sure everyone is involved? And from that angle, I've started feeling that in management, people no longer ask about ISO. They look at you as a process champion. It is still safety. They come to consult you, but they own the other responsibility of buying in and doing things. And you may not easily migrate it to move away from the QHSE department, but I would be happy by seeing the people taking on initiatives, people checking their procedures, people reviewing and see if what they use makes sense to them. I just last did remember I wrote down post on LinkedIn,
Okay.
and there's one last quote I put down. Yeah. And it was speaking about whether safety systems are compliance tools or are tools that work where someone does something where no one is seeing him. You do your toolbox talk. What you discuss is your business of that activity. And I believe that is where accountability is asked per department, not asked as HSE reminding people where toolbox talks. And that's only where we shall find ourselves not having to live as a department for the management system.
Yeah.
But what you said, it's a fact. It stays there, but it doesn't mean we before certification we could not have anything consistent. Yeah. Until now, where we are saying certification is like this, you're required to have procedures, you do ABCD. So I believe this challenge comes in. How do we deal with it? Make sure that you have a full company, like either representative or what, who sits on the system, and they do not come in during the audit, but they drive everything on a day-to-day.
Thank you. Very, very insightful answers coming in there. Now, as we come towards the end of this podcast, I would like us to think about some solutions. And I'm thinking, as we are all aware, that top management have a big role to play in ISO benefiting the organization in terms of operational efficiency and continuous improvement. So the question that I'm putting to you now, and this is, imagine the business leaders out there who are listening to this or who are watching this right now, what specific things can they do to ensure that if they are pursuing ISO certification or if they are already ISO certified, that this management system can actually turn into something that benefits the organization positively? We'll start with Frank.
Thank you so much, Ronald, for that question. And I think this is an interesting question because this is where I believe the discussion should be focusing now. So how do we make ISO more relevant to organization? Because currently it's being used mostly, it's been downsized into a marketing tool. How can we turn ISO into something of more benefit to organizations? And I will speak to about points in how organizations can benefit from this. I think the first important thing is change of purpose. For me, I believe everything starts with a purpose. Change of purpose is very, very important. Purpose is something that changes over time, the direction. If initially our purpose for going in for certification was basically of looking at it as a marketing tool, it's still not too late to change the purpose and look at it differently. One of the most important things that I think in my this journey of ISO professionally where I've worked from is
Yes.
selling the idea to the company. ISO is more than just a compliance tool. ISO helps you in more than ways that beat compliance, but into continued improvement because ISO is more of a tool that drives improvement into your operations or into your activities. So my first idea is always selling the approach that this is more than a compliance tool. Now, currently where I work, we are certified, we are triple certified, 9001, 14001, 45001. Now, what I have been able to do just to start with is driving this from the point of not just saying this is for quality compliance, this is for environmental compliance or safety compliance, to driving them into I call them the three P's: the
The three
people,
P's.
planet, and profit. 3 P's.
Okay.
So planet and profits. So meaning when we implement 45,001, we are looking at protecting our people. Now, when we protect our people, this already has an impact on the bottom line because accidents are a cost, whether it's from the medical treatment or the productivity losses because somebody is away from work, to insurance costs,
Yes.
to reputation, litigation. These are costs. So when you give it a purpose that when we do ISO 45001, we are doing this for our people, and when we do this for our people, we contribute to the bottom line because we are saving on expenses that would have affected the bottom line. So that in itself is purpose. Now, when you look at ISO 9001, ISO 9001 is at the core for the business, and every business is looking about customer satisfaction, and ISO 9001 will help you achieve that. So we trigger it, the purpose, around profits, because we know if we consistently deliver our commitments to satisfy the needs and requirements of our customers, the
Yeah.
money will come, then the profit. So instead of focusing directly on the profit, we focus on the process in a way that the profit is just a given, because if we control the process, the profit is just a given. Driving purpose, aligning purpose in that as a professionals in this line is very, very important for us to support organizations to see it from our point of view, because they are seeing it from a narrow point of view as a marketing tool. So we need to have that bit of driving it into them that this is more than just a marketing tool. It can help us achieve more. Now, two is, of course, once you get the buy-in of top management or leadership,
Yeah.
it makes it a bit easier for you. It makes it easier for you in the implementation, because once top management has bought into this, that we have a bigger purpose as to why we are doing this, it makes your work easier. Now, the second level for me is the involvement of the people, because when you're creating a system that outlives you, even when you're not there, things work normally. Everything flows. Systems, I mean, it does not depend on who is there, but activities, operations, and everything works around normally, irrespective of who is there. So that's very, very important. So involvement of the people into these systems means that you have to invest time into coaching and mentoring of people, whether it's at the high level, the managers, whether it's in the middle level, the supervisors, whether it's even the low level, at the people getting these activities done, doing these operations. Everybody needs to understand their contribution into these management systems, and they need to understand why this is important. Because many a times, even from the smallest level where the people are, we do procedures for them. We don't
Yeah.
get in the buy-in from them. We don't explain to them why these procedures are important. Then
Yeah.
we rush to blame them for following the procedures, why they are not doing things as per the procedure. But because we did not integrate them into that system, so that integration and the involvement of people, for me, is very, very important. And then once leadership has bought in, and then we have engaged the people, people understand why this is important and the things that we need to do, then it's easier to integrate it into our daily operations. So now ISO does not now necessarily become something that we do once in a while when we are planning to do internal audits or when external auditors are coming. It then becomes a part of us, because every day the things that we do, if we are talking about risk assessments, we all understand why we are doing these risk assessments, where even these risks are coming from, because there's when we sit and we do risk assessments, the risk assessment is entirely different from the records of accidents. When you look at the records of accidents, the things happening on ground are specifically different from what we have in our risk registers. So there is no link in between.
Yeah.
So there has to be a link that even accident reports, the accident things that we get, feed into our risk assessments that we are doing. So there's that bit of integration from everyday things that we do to every document, whatever that we are having as our ISO documentation. There becomes a link in that way. In that way, this will help organization realize more in terms of these ISOs, the management systems. This, I believe, it may not work for every organization, I may say, but I'm just sharing experience of how I have been able to use this, how this has worked for me in different organizations. It may not be one size fits all, but I believe some of those insights really help to support organizations see management systems from a different point of view. I'll give a simple example.
Okay.
We have you will have a management review meeting, like the way Norman said,
Yeah.
and the top leadership is not anywhere there. And now the issues that we get discussed in those reviews are more of operational issues that supervisors would even be discussing at the lower level. Yet there are a lot of at a strategic level are things that are hindering the system itself and then we downplay them, and then we tend to focus a lot on those small operational issues that should even be addressed in day-to-day operations, not even a management review meeting. So that's very, very important. But when the buy-in is there, leadership comes into part of these management reviews. The CEO or that EXCO member comes to attend these meetings, and they're also able to provide support at a higher level, because some of the issues to do with management systems, it's not only the down level, it's actually a system for the organization. So the organization, especially at the high level, needs to be involved in how they want this system to work for the organization.
Thank
I
you.
think I would submit at that point.
Thank you so much for that in-depth submission. Norman, could you speak to the business managers and business leaders who are watching you now on what practical steps they can take to ensure that ISO certification indeed yields positive operational improvement and continuous improvement, as opposed to it being compliance for compliance's sake? Over to you, Norman.
Thanks, Ronald. I think that angle of talking to the executives, the first important part is one definition. What's the business case for having an ISO certification? What are the clear benefits and how can we make this work? Because yes, every business has always had a case, but how you use it is what matters most. So the first case is, I think for business managers, as Frank has said, it's so important to understand one thing is that, yes, you can start a journey rough. As you've mentioned, whichever way you started, you're ISO certified or you intend to go into ISO certification. These are first things someone should think about. One, define a clear roadmap. Don't make ISO certification just a one-stop journey. Make it a round trip and continuous. Have a roadmap or a milestone where you have clear milestones. And these milestones should be very clear. As you mentioned, you attained a certificate. It's worth to celebrate it. I tell people it's not a crime to celebrate ISO certification. But you should ask as management. Imagine a company which just got its triple accidents. Assuming you transport fuel with tankers,
Yeah.
in the next 3 months, you have 2 accidents where even lives have lost. How would you feel? Will you still even mention that you're ISO certified? Those are the questions maybe some people need to understand. What is the impact of on reputation of you not doing what you say you do? What impact can it have? By the way, management systems may not, you may just first, the certificate is a certificate. First think about you're a reputable transporter, right? Everyone looks up to you, right? Even people would benchmark to start a business in transport with you.
Yes.
And I think these are the management conversations. Business is not about secrecy. Yeah. If as a and this is these are things I would expect. If you're a top company, if you meet a CEO of a company who is let's say, I'll give an example, the levels of Vivo Total who transport fuel for years, he may first take you through safety. Not because it's an accident, because safety has been integrated into their systems and they live by it. Just looking at truck marked by his name, he may decide to even leave a car and walk around to see if it looks right. How does that come? That comes when you have introduced what I may call culture or traditional things you do as you. I'll give you an example. You have operations throughout the country. Have you ever thought of having joint walks with your operations teams to go to those sites and ask for accountability? Look at the level. Remember, whatever is done outside your head office is a reflection of how people look at you.
Correct.
Whether you're a petrol station, whether you're a telecom company, whether you do real estates. It's not about the beauty of the completed building you've done. It's about the processes, how it came about. Remember, nowadays we have a lot of social media. You'll be proud to have built the best, most beautiful building when people have memories of people having died because it collapsed. So I think it's high time business people understand that these systems are a true reflection of how we operate, not necessarily the documents stuck on our walls, not the audit records we create either overnight, but how exactly our products come into existence in the real world. So In this case, that puts the business, the top management, into risk-based thinking, which is which is a key part of ISO 9001.
Yeah.
What is a business risk on an enterprise level? It's a major occurrence. I've given you an example. A transport of fuel, once one truck loses all its oil, it has environmental aspects, it has people dead, and you're all over every media. No one wants that. But if you do not have that thought and all you think about is just the profit margin without knowing how that profit comes or one impact can erase that exact profit and the company name, it means you're going to continue to get another person to make you get a certificate. So I think as top executives, as top leaders, they need to get more involved into defining expectations. For instance, I've given you an example of you'll go in a company where the MD, the CEO can open the meeting with a safety moment. It's not a show off, but he wants to pick, and it may be aligned to the business you're going to do. It means they've been doing it over and over, and it has seemed so natural. And you don't need to be reminded about safety. Already you are demonstrating it because you've even shared maybe something that could have happened, how you fixed it, all that. Incidents are not covered up. You have still your incident learning from lessons on your notes boards, but they are not hidden under your PowerPoint or SharePoint notes. And all those are management systems. In order to do those things consistently, you must be saying, this is how we do work. We have nothing to put under the carpet. Everything is a lesson learned. And whether they change the CEO, they change the MD, if you are doing these things intentionally, if you're having these culture practices, it would be very rare for a person to come in a company and change those, because already they are embedded in your procedures. And there are things which even welcome the person. He was inducted by almost unknown HSE officer, or maybe by a safety committee member, because the HSE ban was not there. So those are like small things, but that's when systems are in practice. And I believe with all those small bits, awarenesses, you schedule an awareness, the first person to appear is the CEO. Do you think you'll have anyone remaining in his chair?
No.
And this is what happens. I will not hide. My top manager, for every awareness program we call, he's the first to go in and put on his video and welcome people. And it's leadership by
that communicates a lot to the organization.
And so I think when people think of management systems and certification, they need to think about these things which keep visible, and they end up becoming natural than just thinking about certification. If you do everything on paper, if you don't have on ground things which are visible, you're going to still spend more money. And maybe another person comes and sees no value in that, says, let it fast hold, or buys someone, gets now an external auditor to do the audit, just to remove those things that take up time for people to be productive. And maybe the last one, we need to be data driven. It's very important that you have data to back up in your reporting. Be straight. How much downtimes have you had in the last year, and how much does that impact the customer delivery? Have that data. It's very easy, and if it's now the management in different departments demonstrating that, it encourages the top management to be involved, to ask questions, to understand that these management systems are there to enrich your process approach, enrich, to make consistent. You can define what profit you'll make, because you clearly know that you're cautious of the risks amidst what you do. So, any unmitigated risk can take away the money you want to look forward. Bonus systems, people have bonus systems. They'll tell you, if you have these incidents, you may not get anything. But the question is not about the incidents, it's the controls on the shop floor and every day. And an example of a top management walking to a site to see how you build a site means he's already detecting what could happen on the lowest point of the business. Thank you.
All right. Excellent submissions there, Frank and Norman. As we wind up this Talking Safety podcast, I have a final question, and this question is up to you. Is there an important question or an important subject or an important issue that you think we have not yet covered regarding this subject, you can come in and present it now. Frank, anything that you thought we would have covered but we have not touched on but you feel is really important, over to you.
Okay, I think in our previous discussion, we've discussed a lot about the ISO management systems, how businesses or how business managers can also adopt them to just move away from the marketing tool aspect. But I think for me, the other aspect that I feel from my side, it's important that can help support in adding value to the ISO management systems is the issue of verifying documentation vis-a-vis operations. Now, this came to me as a question in one of the meetings, management review meetings that we are having with my team, and they look at me as the technical expert into these management systems. Now, they asked me a question which I also understood with them. They asked me, what controls does ISO have over these different operations? Now, this question came about at a point because one of the competitors for my business was also ISO 9001 certified. However, they were putting out into the market fake products. So now, from the business perspective, the team was asking me, does ISO have control over a way in terms of to verify the products that other people put on the market? Because if you say I'm ISO 9000 certified, another company is saying I am ISO 9000 certified, but there's literally no difference. They are putting out fake products. You're trying your best to deliver the best of service. The other person is putting a replica of what you're doing into a less value of what you're actually doing, and then it makes it hard for competition. So they are looking at how does ISO level the grounds for competition out there. So that was a good question that I got, and I've been thinking a lot about it and seeing how does this come into play? Because in terms of the documentation, what these organizations will document is entirely a little bit different from what they give out there as their product or a service of their process. So there's that difference. So now, one of the things we've been working together with, especially the certifying body that we are working with, we work with NEMCO in our certifications. And one of the things that we discussed with them and we've managed to implement with them is what we call process validation. Now, I think that is one easier way to add into external audits. Even this can be adopted into internal audits, but especially for external audits, where an external party is verify your process. So process validation basically means you have all your SOPs and things for your activities that you're going to do there. I won't tell you what I'm going to validate today, but I'll just come in randomly and say, for example, I want to validate your process for making this product. So you're going to walk me through from the start of the process, from raw material, how you receive and everything, up to the last part of how your product comes out and what comes out with it, how you verify your product, the quality controls, the quality gets along the way, and everything along that. So just to ensure that what you're actually doing on ground does not differ from what you're documenting as your process. So just to have that bit of it's not something that is on the ISO standards as a mandatory thing, but it's just a way to add value to the certification or to add value to the audits as a way of avoiding things of I document different and what I do is different. So, for example, in health and safety, I have an emergency procedure. It may not necessarily you will show me drills that you've done, but I'll come on board and I will create a situation where probably just to say somebody faints here. How do you handle this situation? Whether you have first aiders on ground, what do they do? So it detects a real life scenario of what happens as opposed to looking at just a document and saying this meets the requirements and this meets the requirements. So you're going to the aspect of seeing that whatever is documented is actually what is being done. Now, if there's an organization that has not been doing the things that they are documenting, it's easier to catch them in this process validation because they are going to be fidgeting with that process because they're trying to remember how they documented it. And it's because it's not the way how they do it every day. There will be a lot of flaws within how they do that activity. And I think now this necessarily may be for the different parties that are doing certifications or those that are supporting in terms of audits. I think it's an approach that we need to look into just to see to add value into these audits and management systems to give value to these organizations. And we are also putting the organizations at a check. We are not giving them the room to escape with just only having documents. We are also being able to validate these processes that they are saying. I think that for me would add a lot more value to this process.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Frank, for that. Frank has talked about process validation, and I think it's something that I will be adopting as well from time to time, as opposed to waiting for a once a year audit. Norman, over to you.
Okay, I think as per ISO, mine may be a lesson picked from the audits, and maybe it may be a lesson for the country, and it's mainly on the safety committee. I know it's one process of consulting employees. It's a crucial one, but one thing I've seen that is lacking, there is no proper guidance on the training and requirements clearly defined under our law as a country. The Oath Act does not define fully how the competence requirements, the trainings, and basically how the Sheikh Committee operates. Why I'm bringing this, it's one committee. It can be the quality committee, even if it's not the company is not adopting, let's say, safety. The input, for instance, you've talked about process validation internally. This is the team which can help you do that validation vis-a-vis how we do things and how we are writing them down. How internally can we validate that we do things as we are supposed? And as I've given an example, you can have cross-examination of different members examining different sections, picking live scenarios, having those walks to sites. But my bigger call is it's something, it may not need to be reviewing the law. It can come out as an amend. I don't know. It's under the law. It's like a code of practice, if I can use
Some
the right
kind of
word. It's a code
guideline.
of practice on how to. Yes, the same way we go to the workplace ergonomics and everything. I think it's something very important because, as you've mentioned, internally who checks what, and I think that committee, whether the quality check committee, can do a lot of good service to make sure that beyond ISO, who is there to make sure that this the systems we put in place remain live. They don't just happen as periodically reviewed documents, but we live by them every day. So that's something maybe I think that is very critical, and maybe a discussion about the operation of the safety committees or the quality committees would be another important area, which I believe we can do and support. You're not going to train what they are supposed to do or what, but at least an insight into the operation, their responsibilities, and how they operate can be a crucial discussion. Maybe another good time.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I look forward to covering safety committees in the future, probably with you as well. We have come to the end of this podcast. I would like to thank you so much, Frank Munguleni, for coming on and contributing. I also like to thank you, Norman. I need to mention that both panelists are very active on LinkedIn. Munguleni, find her on LinkedIn, follow them and engage with their content if you would like to learn more about how they think and the insights from them. I've been Ronald Bete hosting you. I look forward to sharing more videos with you on topics around QHSC in 2026. Thank you and have a good day.